Welcome to today's episode of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Today we will be looking at the palace that started it all, the epitome of lavish living and all that comes with it, positive or negative, Palace of Versailles. When the needs of kings is considered, many forget about an opulent need for the basic entertainments of humanity: fishing, hunting, and hiking. This was the original purpose of this grand palace. Originally constructed by Louis XIII to function as a hunting chateau, taking advantage of the then untouched land. During the reign of the Sun King, Louis XIV, he hired Lebrun to paint his legacy, as the untouchable Sun King, on the walls and ceiling of the palace. In fact, Louis's power is symbolized throughout the architecture of the palace itself. The gardens symbolize his power over nature, a fact reflected in the construction of the palace, of course, itself. The palace remained through several kings, growing ever more lavish and growing ever more symbolic of the decadent monarchy it symbolized. Thus, as the revolution began to stir in France, the palace was closed after being abandoned by Louis XVI, and its furniture was sold at auction. The grand gardens were opened for the public to use, while the interior of the palace was turned into a museum and art gallery. In general, the palace has not served its original purpose since then. However, its museum status has remained, and Napoleon didn't really reign long enough to turn into a true palace for himself.
Starting in 1701, King Louis XIV moved his bedchamber into a large room covering nearly 90 square meters, situated in the center of the eastern facade of the palace. In the royal residence, the entrance is marked by the guards room. The king's guards were stationed here to ensure the sovereign's protection and were changed every 24 hours. The room is not very decorated as it was a guard room. The little decor that is within the room contains references to fighting in tribute to the room's role. A painting by Joseph Paracel that hangs over the fireplace, Battle, featuring the King's Guards, 1684, honors the guards. Moving from the guard room is the antechamber of the Great Dining. This part of the King's apartment was where Louis XIV used to dine in public from 1690. The room is decorated with a series of 11 battle paintings by Joseph Paracel and a 12th depicting the Battle of Arbela by Guillaume Courtois. The second chamber within the King's apartment is the Bull's Eyes antechamber. Named after the circular window which brings light into the room on the southern side, the room was originally divided into two by a partition wall and was composed of the antechamber and the king's chamber, in which the bed was placed in the left-hand corner next to the current fireplace. The decoration in this room testifies to the changes in the king's personal taste. With the start of the new century, he abandoned rich marble decoration and painted ceilings and replaced them with white ceilings and gilded woodwork. The final part of the king's apartment is the council room. The council room is adjacent to the king's chambers and opens onto the Hall of Mirrors. The chamber is decorated with fine woodwork crafted by Anthony Rassouet and based on drawings by Henri Jacques Gabriel. The elaborate motifs illustrated subjects addressed by the king during council meetings, such as war and justice. The decor also includes a Rococo-style clock, 1754, a bust of Alexander the Great, and two vases of Mars and Minerva in Service porcelain and chased bronze by Pierre-Philippe Daumier, 1787. The Hall of Mirrors is by far the most famous room in all of Versailles. Built to replace a large terrace designed by the architect Louis Levois, the terrace originally stood between the king's apartments to the north and the queen's to the south. It was, however, awkward and above all exposed to bad weather. The decision was then made to demolish it. Levois' successor, Jules Haudoin Mansart, produced a more suitable design that replaced the terrace with a large gallery. Work started in 1678 and ended in 1684. The whole length of the Hall of Mirrors pays tribute to the political, economic, and artistic success of France. Political successes are illustrated through the 30 painted compositions on the vaulted ceilings by Charles Le Brun. Military and diplomatic victories and reforms, with a view to reorganizing the kingdom, are illustrated through allegories from antiquity. Economic prosperity is revealed in the number and size of the 357 mirrors bedecking the 17 arches opposite the windows, demonstrating that the new French manufacture could rival the Venetian monopoly on mirror manufacturing. The Hall of Mirrors also served as a place of waiting and meeting, as well as for ceremonies on rare occasions. Aside from the hall, 2 rooms are present, the War Room and the Peace Room. Jules Haudois Mansart started building the War Room in 1678. The walls are covered with marble panels and decorated with 6 trophies and weapons in gilded bronze. The Peace Room is symmetrical to the War Room and contains the same marble panel decoration and chased trophies of arms in gilded bronze. Le Brun decorated the cupola and arches on the themes of the benefits of peace brought to Europe by France. Inaugurated in 1770 during the reign of Louis XV, the Royal Opera was at the time the largest concert hall in Europe and was also a great technical achievement and an impressive feat of decorative refinement. The Royal Opera is one of the greatest works by the architect Ange Jacques Gabriel. King Louis XIV had wanted the palace to have a concert hall that could accommodate the luxurious decor needed to host shows with machines. Due to the designs of the time, however, none had pleased the king, and he had turned his attention to the construction of the royal chapel. With the rise of Louis XV, architect Ange Jacques Gabriel was able to develop his designs and project. After exploring the finest halls in Italy, Gabriel set out to build the perfect theater. It would not be designed to host ordinary shows, performances given regularly in the court for a relatively small audience, but grand events with a large number of spectators, nearly 1,500 people. Louis XV would eventually commission the project. Inaugurated on the 16th of May, 1770, for the feast for the wedding of the Dauphin and the Archduchess Marie Antoinette, this extraordinary theater was used only 40 or so times before the Revolution. The cost, although high, was not the only reason for its limited use. It was used for royal weddings and to honor foreign sovereigns, for whom balls or shows were organized. The theater was last used for a celebration of the French court on the 18th of July, 1784, when a ball was given in the honor of King of Sweden Gustav III. The Banquet of the Guards, 5 years later, on the 1st of October, 1789, was the last event held during the time of the Aquitaine regime.
The architecture of the Palace of Versailles remains a stunning encapsulation of the French Baroque period. While the original structure was just a traditional French hunting lodge, the second monarch to occupy the structure, Louis XIV, decided to turn it into a grand palace while maintaining the original structure held within. Thus, the various Baroque architects that worked on the project had to create this structure in mind to the structure that preceded it. The paintings held within orders of columns and grand areas such as the Hall of Mirrors became a symbol of French wealth during the Baroque period. The first beautiful artwork that we will be taking a look at is the Coronation of Napoleon. The story of the Palace of Versailles, of course, is not complete without representation of the once great Emperor of France, Napoleon Bonaparte. This painting represents that ruler. During his coronation ceremony in 1804, Napoleon knew the historic importance of this, and he decided to embark upon it his own way. He took a cue from Charlemagne and made sure his reign was supported by the Pope. However, rather than having the Pope bestow the crown upon himself, Napoleon was the one who gave himself the crown, showing his power over God. This painting depicts the lavish room in which the coronation took place. Various courtly figures surround Napoleon, who is crowning his wife as empress. The classical inspiration is made apparent when looking at the leader himself, being adorned with olive branches. In fact, his appearance is very much like that of Julius Caesar. As he places the crown upon his wife's head, a beam of light, as if God himself is saying, "I approve this message," shines down. Unfortunately, this original is not located within the palace. Instead, the one that resides within the palace is a copy made by the student of Jacques-Louis David, Georges Roget. However, this piece retains a very similar value and will forever remain an important piece of French and art history. Just on the other door of French history lies the last queen of the Ancien Regime, Marie Antoinette. This particular painting was created by Elizabeth Louise Vigée-Lebrun. It shows the princess's high picture of herself. She was the Queen of France, the greatest nation known to man. In this picture, she is shown as a beautiful, almost Disney-like princess. Her lavish silk dress as well as her flowing hair appear as such that their presence is to be envied, while making the fact known that they were achieved effortlessly. She carries a flower and is in the foreground of a natural scene, potentially even the gardens of Versailles. Of course, this queen has also become a symbol of the decadent Ancien Regime and was summarily executed along with her husband during the French Revolution. This portrait perfectly depicts the last residence of this grand palace. When the gardens were created, Louis XIV was in search of a way to emphasize his greatness even further. To do so, he decided to create one of the most lavish gardens known to mankind, just to show the Sun King's prowess over nature. In order to plant his gardens, he employed thousands of men, entire regiments of the French army, to shift soil, dig canals, and plant trees. Throughout the garden, beautiful ponds, such as these, were all created using raw muscle power. The water was routed in via hand-dug canals. The beautiful lawns were maintained by armies of men besides, and ornate marble sculptures were created to suit the needs of the Sun King. That concludes today's episode of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. If you yourself would like to be features on next week's episode, please send our editors a message, and we will single-handedly send you through hundreds of years of revolutions and artwork creation to create such a beautiful work as the Palace of Versailles.